You have a community of people around you that's like, hey, Patty, you said you were going to do this. Why haven't you done it? Hey, Melanie, you said you were going to launch this. Why hasn't it launched? Hey, Lindsay, you said you were going to stop doing this, but I see you on your stories still doing it. What's up with that? That's the power of being in a community. And that's the power of accountability that most likely, that's what every single one of you needs. You don't need to learn anymore. In fact, you don't need to spend another dollar on a training. You just spend your money on accountability and implementation.
What's up, and welcome back to the Scale Your Sales podcast. I am your host and your soon-to-be podcast BFF, Jillian Murphy. If you are absolutely exhausted of hearing the same podcast that only leaves you feeling motivated and just a bunch of fluff, well, you have absolutely landed on the right podcast today. In this episode, we are going to talk about the most important skill you need to generate your business, and that is sales. We are going to dive into topics such as messaging, marketing, how to build lead generation organically, and we are going to talk about how to create consistent cash months inside of your business. And we are also going to talk about how to build a company that isn't just about making money, but is also bringing in actual wealth, while getting back to what I know is your most important thing, time freedom. Now, I am here for real talk, real advice, straightforward tip, and no BS. You can always walk away and implement everything that we talk about in our show and move it into your business immediately. But I have to tell you, I am not your typical business mentor. We are going to talk about things that nobody else is probably talking about on the internet. We are going to talk about what it takes to build a real company and not just about how to manifest your business or how you can make $1 million tomorrow. But if that's what you're looking for, this podcast is absolutely not for you. We are going to talk about the real skills to build a real business. Now, I have spent over 25 years in the corporate sales space, generating over $100 million in sales through multiple industries in the online and the brick and mortar space. I have been able to help over 500 entrepreneurs not only grow their sales, but scale their businesses. Several times per week, I'm going to bring you solo episodes, guest episodes, and even hot seat coaching so that you are able to scale your sales. Now, grab a pen and paper, your beverage of choice, and let's freaking go.
What's up, friends? Welcome back to the podcast. This might not be the best sound because I am actually driving back from Newport Beach, California, and I'm in my car. But I wanted to just grab my phone and have a really open and honest, real, vulnerable conversation with all of you because I just spent the last 4 days in a mastermind. This is a mastermind that I've been part of now, going on my 4th year with my mentors, Chris and Lori Harder, and I've actually been part of their world for 5 years now. I was in another mastermind with them. I was actually coaches inside of their program. I'm actually going to be a coach in their new program that they're launching, and they have just been just the most solid humans inside of my business since I really started it, and I can't imagine having anyone else as my mentor. But I just really want to just dive right into my 5 biggest takeaways that I got from spending 5 days, 4.5 days, with entrepreneurs in the space of 7 and 8 figures. So we're gonna dive right in. So number 1 is we are all fearful. We are absolutely all fearful. So the number 1 exercise that we did when we got into the room was we all had to grab the microphone in front of the entire group, and I actually loved this exercise, and this might be a little bit of a spoiler alert if this episode drops before Infinity Live, but I'm actually going to do this exercise at my event because I think that this exercise was so beautiful in the fact that it really allowed you to feel seen in front of your peers, but it also allows you to see that everyone else is literally in the same place as you. So everybody grabbed the mic and they talked about what they were fearful of right now. And some of the things that were said were, I'm fearful that my business is not going to grow this year because of the economical times that we're in. I'm fearful that I'm going to be working so hard that my marriage is going to fail. I'm fearful that I'm in a relationship right now that I've outgrown. I'm fearful that I'm going to make the wrong hire. I'm fearful that I don't have enough cash runway in my business. I'm fearful that I've outgrown friendships and I'm going to have uncomfortable conversations. I'm fearful that my business is going to fail and it's going to leave me with a bad reputation and nobody's going to want to work with me ever again. I'm fearful that this business is actually never going to take off. Like, I want you to stop right now and ask yourself, how many of these are how you're feeling right now? So maybe you're listening to this podcast right now and you are 0 to 6 figures in your business, or you're 6 figures to 500K in your business, or maybe you are a 7 or 8 figure entrepreneur that's listening to this podcast right now. But let me ask you, how many of these things are the exact same fear that you feel? All I know is that every single one of these things that somebody said, I was like, yep, me too, amen, thank you for saying that. And it really just set the playing field for the entire week. And it made me feel safe, and it also made me feel my peers. Because when you're walking into a room where people are doing $1 million months, $1 million quarters, 7, 8 figures a year, $10 million a year in their business, getting huge buyouts for their businesses, getting acquired, all of these things, it's really easy to be like, oh, my problem is small. I'm not going to raise my hand. It's crazy that I have this fear. But yet, we all have them. So that was lesson number 1. Lesson number 2 that was so powerful was that we often do not put in the work that it takes to really build the business. And this mind-blowing concept, I already knew. Okay, I absolutely already knew it. But why this one actually hit home so much differently was we actually had the founder of Super Coffee come in. Many of you guys have maybe drinking Super Coffee or have bought Super Coffee or have seen Super Coffee at your local grocery store. They're actually the fastest growing bottled coffee company in the nation. And I actually know Super Coffee because my background is actually in food service distribution. And for many years in my corporate company, I was the food service buyer for specialty drinks. So kombuchas, specialty waters, coconut waters, protein drinks, all of those type of things. And I was actually a buyer for Super Coffee. And I can remember when Super Coffee was on Shark Tank and all of the things, right? Like, we were so excited when Super Coffee came into us and we were able to distribute it at our corporate company. So one of the things that he talked about, Jimmy, the founder, who was actually Lori Harder's mentor, so she's building a CPG company, a product-based company called Close Beach. If you guys haven't tried it, it's amazing, such a great gut health product. But one of the things that he actually talked about was the really early beginnings. And while we see him now as the fastest growing coffee company and, you know, being on Shark Tank and being in every single basically grocery store, 7-Eleven or CVS or Walgreens or Target or all of these things, it was about the beginning. In the beginning were 3 boys, and they were like boys, he said, you know, we were just out of high school and just in our early college years, and they were literally going to every local grocery store, literally begging for a spot in front of a grocery store and basically just serving coffee samples and hoping that they would get 5 people at most to stop and try their coffee. And they were like, people actually even hated the coffee at the beginning because it wasn't what they were used to. They had MCT oils in it, they had proteins in it, they had vitamins and minerals in it, so it wasn't even what like people were used to for coffee. And it was hard to get people to even stop. It was hard to get people to even talk to them. But they would get 5 people. And then the next weekend they would go back and they would get 10 people. And the next weekend they would go back and they would get 4 people. They would be so discouraged, right? How many of you guys can relate to this? you get 10 people on a webinar, you feel really good, and then the next week you get 4 people on the webinar, and you feel discouraged, and you're like, oh, this isn't working. But it's like, you got to go back, because 10 might show up the next week, or 11 might show up the next week, and they did this. And their journey was 9 years. 9 years. And through those 9 years, they raised capital, they got investors, they changed the formulation, they had product issues, they had bad reviews. They said Barbara on Shark Tank gave them the worst thing anybody could have ever said. She was like, boys, you guys are really cute, but I can't get this taste out of my mouth, and I want to use my pen to scrape the taste off of my tongue. They were like, how do you come back from that on national television, right? And some of you guys are worried about posting something on Instagram because your Aunt Sally might not like it, that nobody's even going to see. Or putting something in your stories because a girlfriend from high school might judge you. And they got ridiculed on national television on a product that they're trying to sell, and they're like, okay, how do we come back from that? And the other thing that was so good about this, which is actually point number 3, was really being entitled. And why this was so important was they had friends who were with Poppy, which was the company that was just acquired by Pepsi for $2 billion. And Poppy was blowing up. And Poppy was getting all of these deals. And Poppy was in all of these stores. And everybody was raving about Poppy. And nobody was really paying attention to them. And they were getting really discouraged. And they were like, oh, if this is happening for Poppy, why isn't this happening for us? All right, let's take a little temperature check right now. How many of you guys are in a mastermind? In fact, let's drill it down even more. How many of you guys are in infinity? And you're like, well, why is this happening for her, but it's not happening for me? Why are they having that sales month, but it's not happening for me? Why are they having that launch, but it's not happening for me? Versus just keeping your head down. Because one of the things that Jimmy said, the founder of Super Coffee, is it's not a matter of how you start, but it's a matter of how you finish. And many of you guys are still in the start. Many of you guys are still in the infancy of your business, right? You're at your 0 to first 6 figures, or even at your first multiple 6 figures. That's still the infancy. So it's not even a matter of how you start, but it's how you actually finish. And that was such a really great reminder. So that was point number 3. Point number 4 was, in order to do different, you got to show different. You got to be different. You got to move different. And you got to act different. So there was an exercise that we did that we do every single year. And basically it's called the wager. And what the wager is, if you guys haven't heard me talk about this on the podcast before, is you have to set a wager of what you're going to accomplish by the time we all meet again as a group in October. So this event was here in March, and then we all come together as a big group again in October. And you basically have to state what you're going to accomplish by the time you come back in October. Some people were like, I'm going to sell my business for $5 million. Some people were like, I'm going to lose 25 pounds. Some people were like, I'm going to divorce my husband. Some people were like, we're going to try for our first baby. Some people were like, I'm going to generate $200,000 off of our webinar. Some people were like, I'm going to fire a teammate, right? Everybody had a different wager, and it ranged from business to personal. And it's easy to write it down on a piece of paper, right? Oh, this is what I'm going to do. But then we broke off into small groups of like 5 or 6 people. I don't remember the actual amount. But 5 or 6 groups of people. Then from there, we had to get really honest about what's going to get in the way of this. Is it procrastination? Is it overthinking? Is it, sure, it's really easy to set this goal here in this room when I'm around my expanders and I'm around my soul sisters and brothers. But now I'm going to go out into the real world and I'm going to start doubting myself. And I'm going to start overthinking. And I'm going to start getting in my own way. Or I'm going to start procrastinating. Or my money mindset's going to start to sink in, right? All of these types of things. So right now, I want to ask yourself, what is something that you're working on? What's the goal, right? Say it out loud if you're in your car, or if you're on a walk, or if you're in the shower, or you're just listening to this. Like, what's the goal you're working on right now? And then I want to ask yourself, how do you have to show up different? What do you have to do? Who do you have to be in order for this to happen? So I know what my personal goal was, and I had to get really honest in my small group. And I had to say, there's daily habits that have to change. I have to literally become someone different in order for this to happen. I have to change my money mindset if this is going to come to fruition. I have to act a certain way if this is going to happen. And more importantly, I have to stop certain things if this is going to happen. So I want you to go through this same exercise. Maybe you're not listening to this podcast right now at your desk. So I want you to come back to this episode. I want you to grab a piece of paper and a pen, or a Google Doc, or a whiteboard, and I want you to write out your big goal. Whether it's business or personal, and I believe you should have both. Because how you do one thing is how you do everything, right? If you're not showing up in your marriage, you're probably not showing up in your business. If you're an overthinker in your business, you're probably an overthinker in relationships. If you're a procrastinator in your relationship, you're probably a procrastinator in your business, right? There's a through line most likely in both. And I want you to get really honest with yourself. And then I want to make sure you have an accountability partner. Someone that's going to check in on you and say, where are you at? What's happening with this? Are you doing this? And if not, why not? That's the purpose of being in a community. This is why Infinity is so impactful. Because Infinity is not a program where I'm teaching at you. It's not a program where you're just learning. It's, hey, this is the goal, and now you have a community of other high-level entrepreneurs around you to keep you accountable. You have a community of people around you that's like, hey, Patty, you said you were going to do this. Why haven't you done it? Hey, Melanie, you said you were going to launch this. Why hasn't it launched? Hey, Lindsay, you said you were going to stop doing this, but I see you on your stories still doing it. What's up with that? That's the power of being in a community. And that's the power of accountability that most likely, that's what every single one of you needs. You don't need to learn anymore. In fact, you don't need to spend another $1 on a training. You just spend your money on accountability and implementation. But that's another podcast for another day. And then the last thing is really about relationships. And it isn't about your personal relationships, like your romantic relationships, but it's really about who's around you that's expanding you. And I want to be really honest with you guys on this podcast. This was the first time in 4 years of this mastermind that I went in with a very different energy. I'm actually a little closed down normally. I'm usually a little more introverted, to be honest. I'm a little bit more reserved, and I'm actually a little bit more guarded. But I said to myself, if I'm going to be in this mastermind again this year, I'm going to show up differently. I actually even had this conversation with Chris, my mentor. I'm like, I'm going to show up differently. I'm going to show up with the energy that my friends see, the energy that people that really love me see, and that's this warm, welcoming energy, and this best friend energy. And I will tell you, I had more in-depth conversations than I've ever had in this mastermind before. I connected more than I've ever have in this mastermind before. I also didn't really care about people that I didn't really connect with, right? In the past, I would have really taken it personal, or I would have really been like, why don't they want to be my friend? I was so grounded in who I was as a human and who I was as a woman, because I went in with very different energy. So I want to ask you right now, like, are you in a mastermind? Are you in a program? Hey, are you in Infinity? But you're not showing up and really connecting with people. Like, really getting to know people. My GPS is going to talk to me for a second. But you're not really getting to know people. You're not really having in-depth conversations. You're not even really giving people the opportunity to get to know you. Maybe you're talking to the same 5 people every week. Or you're just hanging out with people that look and feel like you. I want to challenge you. I want to challenge you to go all in and really get to know new people. You guys, you know Infinity is always open, and I'm always going to plug it on this podcast because I truly believe that every single entrepreneur needs to be inside of this program. It is a community unlike any other. It is a program that's going to teach you the most important skill set that you need in business, how to sell, right? You can learn every single other skill in business, but if you can't get people to buy from you and you can't get people to pay, nothing else matters. Sales is the oxygen of your business. So come on into our world. Let's have a conversation. Slide into my DMs. I want you to. I want to have a conversation with you. And until next time.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Scale Your Sales podcast. If today's episode has you fired up, would you do me a huge favor and leave a review over on Apple or Spotify podcast? Or, of course, you can always take a screenshot and share it on your social media. That is the way we grow this show and so that other people can absolutely learn how to grow their sales as well. I am on a mission to change the mindset of sales. I want people to freaking love sales because the reality is sales is the foundation of everything you do. It's how your business generates revenue consistently. So remember, keep showing up and being unapologetic about selling because once you fall in love with selling, the sky is absolutely the limit. Until next time, happy selling, and my DMs are always open. I can't wait to get to know you better.